Hello, everybody, and welcome to Everybody's a Critic. I'm Pat Casey.
And I'm Scott Eshelman. Welcome back, everybody, or if this is your first episode joining us, welcome to Everybody's a Critic. Just to give you a little bit of background on what we're doing here, we're taking two lists. One list is the BBC Critics' Best Movies from 2000 to 2015. That's a list that's kind of critically acclaimed, and they've decided based on various expert ratings that these are the 100 best movies of the 21st century. And we're placing those up against the 100 best movies as rated by audience score from Rotten Tomatoes. And we're putting these movies from each list, the 100th best versus the 100th best, in a battle of the best movies.
Exactly, like the great Ken Watanabe said in Godzilla, let them fight. So that's what we have here. We have a classic movie showdown, where they say that they don't make them like they used to, but we're gonna put that to the test here. Last week we had a great showdown.
We did.
We had Big Hero 6 going up against Requiem for a Dream, and unfortunately for the big fluffy guy, Requiem for a Dream came out ahead.
And it was a worthy winner. So
Yes.
that enters the 100th spot on our list now, becoming the first movie.
Yep.
We're now looking to move down the list. It's a countdown,
countdown,
right?
yeah.
So we're going from 100 down to number 1. And this week we have a matchup between two very different movies. We have a documentary this week versus more of a drama piece.
Right. So coming in at number 99 for the critics is The Gleaners and I.
Right. And coming in at number 99 from the audience is the movie In America.
Right. So we got a great showdown today, and like any great boxing match, you always got a prize fight.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to get the tail of the tape in there. So to do our tail of the tape, we got two people that I think are very knowledgeable in movies. We've got Matt and Catherine, my fellow Glean teamers, over in the Glean team, or over in the Screenplay Speakeasy. So let's see what they got, huh?
Yeah.
All right, guys, what do you got for us?
Hey everyone, we are here at the Screenplay Speakeasy, and we're talking about two new movies this week. Well, this every 3 weeks, whatever. So we are going to be talking about two movies, one of which I haven't seen. You haven't seen it either?
No.
And what's that movie called?
The Gleaners and I. Not to be confused with The Gleamers and I, which is the official Gleam Team pop culture podcast documentary that has not been made yet.
Oh, I was thinking biopic. Who would play you in a biopic?
Pat Casey. And you would play me. And then I would play him.
Okay.
And you would...
Oprah.
Yep. Bingo.
Anyway, so we're going to be talking about these two movies.
You didn't say the other one.
Yep, I didn't say the other one. The other one's In America.
Not to be confused with Coming to America, which I thought it was. It's not.
It's not. Not
No.
made this millennium, so.
True.
All right, so Matt, why don't you start it off with The Gleaners and I and tell us a little bit about its stats.
I find that there is no one better to tell you about this movie as someone like myself who has never seen this movie. This movie is called The Gleaners and I, and it was made in 2000, same year as Requiem for a Dream. This has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 92% and an audience rated score of 86%. This was directed by French director Agnes Varda, and she also stars in the film itself. It made $155,320 in the box office, which is not that much. The film tracks a series of gleaners as they track food, knickknacks, and thrown away items, and they make personal connections. And basically what gleaners are, they basically, in France, after a harvest, it's legal for them to go and take the things that weren't harvested. So if there's like a large potato or one that was misshapen, then the people who are gleaners can come in and take them, and they basically make their livelihood on this.
That's what Matt's pet name for it is. A large
Misshapen potato. Yep. So, The Gleaners and I was shot between 1999 and 2000, just barely made the cut for our list here. And they would basically shoot in 2-week increments. They'd travel around and shoot for 2 weeks at a time. And then after that, they'd immediately go and scout for the next location. They did that over the period of over a year. And most objects that were caught on film during this documentary were basically strokes of luck. There was a scene where they find a heart-shaped potato in the harvest. There's a thing that they call the dance of the lens cap, where basically Agnes Varda left the lens cap on her video camera and then they sync it up to jazz music. The whole documentary is known for them using the handheld camera, or basically it's basically almost a one-person operation. Varda was once looked at as a secondary figure in the French New Wave circuit for documentaries, but after this was released, she gained a lot of momentum and became more of a primary figure. The Gleaners and I, this documentary is a major player in the reflexive documentary movement, and what the reflexive documentary is where the filmmaker acknowledges and establishes their presence in front of the camera, and they provide a narrative to the documentary, so the viewer becomes just as interested about how the film is made and constructed as they are about the actual content shown in the documentary. This won a ton of awards. It was an official selection at the Cannes Film Festival that year. It was rated as Sights and Sound's 8th best documentary of all time. Other awards that year: the Chicago International Film Fest, the New York City Film Circle Awards, the LA Film Critics Awards, and the Boston Society of Films Critic Awards. So it's a very critically acclaimed film. And we're about to go from France all the way over to America with In America. And Catherine, you're going to be telling us about that.
All right, so In America came out in 2003. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 89% and an audience score of 91%. The box office for this film was about $15.5 million. The director is Jim Sheridan, and it was written by Jim Sheridan, Naomi Sheridan, and Kristen Sheridan, and the two women are Jim Sheridan's daughters. It's starring Patty Considine, Samantha Morton, Sarah Bolger, Emma Bolger, and Jaimin Hansu. Jaimin is a Jaimin.
Jaimin Hansu.
Jaimin Hansu. We did some pronunciation work before this film because I never knew how to say that name. Anyway, this movie follows an Irish family who immigrates to Hell's Kitchen, New York, while also grieving the death of a child. And we've seen this movie.
We actually saw this movie. It's been a while, but I really liked it when I saw it.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty depressing.
It's bleak, yeah.
It's not like it's very gray.
It's not, yeah, it's gray. It's not like, like absurdly depressing in the way that Requiem for a Dream was, but it's gray. That's like the best adjective to describe this movie.
All right, so In America was nominated for 3 Oscars. It was nominated for Best Screenplay, Supporting Actor, and Actress. And Jim Sheridan's daughters, Naomi and Kristen, started writing the films as teenagers. 90% of this movie is based on true events. And I didn't know this until Pat told me, but Jim Sheridan was also the director of My Left Foot. And when he was at an Oscar party for My Left Foot, he actually ran into one of the neighbors from the house that the movie's based on and said, "You should write a movie about that house we lived in." And that's kind of where the concept of the movie came to be.
Huh.
So Frankie is based on Jim Sheridan's brother, who died of a brain tumor. And Mateo is an amalgam of a number of several people, including artist Jean-Michel Basquiat. I hope I didn't butcher that name.
Basquiat.
Basquiat. Do you know who that is? You said that as if you know who that is.
I do.
What
It's like totally Basquiat
yeah.
all over the place.
Can you give me like one true fact about...
Yeah, he draws.
With what? Like, what's his major medium?
Oh, like, the world is his medium.
Okay.
I believe watercolors.
Fact check. Thank you. As of 2014, In America is being developed as a show on HBO, and then Jim Sheridan's daughters are the producers of that show.
So there you have it. We got 2 movie powerhouses head to head, The Gleaners and I versus In America. And while it's hard for us to make a definitive choice based on the fact that we've never actually seen The Gleaners and I, I'm going to go ahead and vote for In America. Again, this doesn't mean anything because we haven't seen the other movie, but the documentary The Gleaners and I just doesn't sound like something I'd be interested in. It sounds kind of drab, and, I liked In America when I saw it.
I don't know if that's necessarily a drab movie or documentary, because I think In America is pretty drab. It's kind of like one of the Mad Men offices if you took everything out of it and just added like grayscale.
And just added poverty.
Yeah, that's kind of what it reminds me of. But I think the Oscar nominations have a lot to do with why In America is going to be more of my choice. And also, we watched this movie, so someone at one point recommended this movie to us, which means it was somewhere on our consciousness where we never even heard of the Gleaners and I until this episode. So, you know, worth maybe checking out. I do like documentaries, so it can't hurt to try. But
maybe we'll check it out in the near future.
Maybe. But for now, we're going In America.
All right. Pat, Scott, back to you guys. You're doing God's work. Enjoy yourself.
And each other.
I love what you're doing. I love both of you. I'm going to keep pointing.
All right.
Oh my.
Thanks, guys. And by the way, Catherine, Matt is kind of right. John Baptiste, or Biscuit, or however they pronounced it, he is a painter. The paintings in Mateo's room are based off his works. They actually look quite a lot alike. I couldn't find out whether or not the two are actually using the actual paintings or his actual paintings, but basically he is a painter. So Matt, you're kind of half right. I'll give you a point for this. So you and Catherine are tied right now. So I guess after that, what do you think here? The backstory, I guess the background, the tale of the tape, so to speak, I guess would favor Gleaners and I just a little bit because it is such a critically acclaimed movie.
Very strange for me that that's the result of that tale of the tape.
Right.
Having watched both of these movies, you know, whether or not you like documentaries or not,
right?
I didn't feel that when I watched The Gleaners and I.
Yeah, 8th best documentary of all time is a huge accomplishment. Also, if you take a look at all the awards that Catherine or Matt read off for Gleaners and I, that's a lot. And I mean, you did have all the Oscar nominations, not necessarily wins for In America, but so I guess coming out of that, we got they both voted for In America. But
I guess their opinion was a little bit skewed, having not seen Gleaners and I. And Gleaners and I is a pretty obscure movie on this list, so we'll give it a chance.
Yeah, so
we'll
I guess it's time to kind of get right into it, right?
Yeah, let's get into the meat potatoes of.
Right. So this was probably much harder for me than it was last week. Because if we weren't doing an actual movie versus here, I don't know if I would have necessarily said that either of these would go on the list.
That's probably true. I mean, they're good. Well, I would say one of these movies is good, not great. Mm-hmm. The other movie just perplexed me.
So let's get to your perplexions, so to speak. So I'm assuming that you're talking about Gleaners and I, correct?
Yeah, you know, I am a guy who enjoys a good documentary. It's not...
There's one thing
There's one thing you know about me. And, you know, I want to stress that this movie, despite being in French and subtitled, that is not the reason why this movie was perplexing to me. And I don't know, maybe you can agree or disagree with that, but...
yeah, I mean...
It doesn't help. It doesn't help, but...
I mean, no, I won't say that. I mean, I'm not going to discount it immediately because of that. I guess my struggle here is that I can almost understand, I can almost see what the critics love about this movie. I mean, it is a member of the French New Wave. It is a reflexive documentary, which Matt gave you the definition for. But even to say like that movie, like I really, like, this is a case where my brain is telling me that the movie that should win this is Gleaners and I, and the heart is telling me that it should be In America.
Well, let me just tell you some things that really struck me about The Gleaners and I.
Go ahead.
The word that comes to mind is bizarre. This movie is bizarre, and it has some odd moments, which you'll see some of them flashed up here as we kind of do our slideshow from the Gleaners and I. And I think one of the things that you talked about was the fact that the woman who does the documentary is carrying around a Sony Handycam or whatever it is, and it's a movie that she's shot. But she is such an eccentric character, and some of the things that she does almost detract from the documentary itself.
Yeah, I understand how that flourishes in there could be like, oh, this is like avant-garde, you know, like they're like as you can see right now, the that is the dance of the lens cap, which is basically she just forgot to turn off the camera and they put jazz music over it, and it's like
it's the lens cap dangling below the camera.
Yeah. But the documentary behind it, the message behind that is something that is prevalent today. I mean, food waste and how people like are. I mean, the whole thing with all those potatoes, like the mounds of potatoes that are thrown away just because they're a little too big or they got a little damaged. I mean, there are people that don't eat, like they don't have the money to be able to afford to eat, right. And there's all this huge waste of all the food, and I mean, like even as of this year, I mean, last week Tonight did a thing about use by dates and sell by dates and stuff like that. So that stuff in there, all the way back in when this came out in 2000, would be relevant today. But the thing that distracts from it is all of that other nonsense that she does, like the grabbing of the cars with her hand, or the age stuff, like that stuff in it really. Let me give
an example or a metaphor for what I think. I think you're taking a topic. The topic that she's trying to address is filet mignon of a topic. It's really good. But then she's doing something really weird with it, like spraying it with string cheese or something like that, or spray cheese to make it new and interesting. And it ruins the filet mignon of a topic that she's got.
Right. And I mean, so I had to work really hard at this to try to find my in for In America, so to speak. In America is incredibly well acted. I think that you probably have two of the greatest kid performances that I've ever seen. They're so naturalistic, and you really believe everything that they're doing. Yeah. And it's really unfortunate that I can't say that these two people are like household names.
You know, I think that's a good point. I think I'm somebody who generally, I see child acting and it turns me off. Not because, you know, I don't like kids, but kid acting is usually one-dimensional. These kids are good actors, and the performances are good.
And if you look technically, okay, so with Gleaners and I, the Handycam is a big part of it. Like it's almost like she discovers it. I mean, she was doing filmmaking when she was a teenager. So the fact that this is like new technology and she doesn't have she can basically run and cut on her own. It is also used in America. Like the Handycam is a major part. And the Handycam is used to great effect, I think, to really put you in the mindset of the children.
Yeah.
The one thing I've really enjoyed about In America is that it really got right the idea of the magic of New York for someone who has never been to New York. The bright lights, like when they come out of the Midtown Tunnel, which I think it's the Midtown Tunnel, they don't really tell you. But I remember when I was young and going to New York like the first time, and the first thing that you're blown away by is just the scope of like all of a sudden you're in, you know, you're like a tiny ant in like a giant city with all the big buildings and everything like that. And I think they really capture that in this movie. The second thing that they really get, which you don't really have today, is the immigrant.
That's
story.
True. Yeah, that was a unique angle on this movie. I think it was set around. The movie was set in the 1980s. Obviously, this is a 2000s
late 80s. Movie. Like I'm not sure if they don't really give you anything to.
That's
to go
the
by
description on the movie.
Right,
box,
and E.T. They watch E.T. in the movie theater, so.
But it's an immigrant story that's different than many of the immigrant stories. It's not like Gangs of New York.
No,
it's more of a modern immigrant story, which is interesting.
Especially in our climate that is today, where immigration has taken a huge, that's been a huge thing in the news, and we've been talking about it it seems all year around our presidential
Very
election and everything.
politicized,
Very politicized thing. So it is very interesting to see this movie through an immigrant's tale. Now they didn't make it 100% like that, because I mean you are following a family of Europeans who migrated into. It might have been a completely different story if it was a Latin American family or somebody else that was immigrating in. But they really do though. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, sure.
But they really do show you the diversity of New York, like where they really nail it. I mean, where they're living. I mean, they're basically the only Caucasian people in the entire. Like, you don't really see many of them, and they really nail that too, I think, in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, though, we need to look at some of the detracting factors of this movie. So, one of the things I think that we had talked about that is maybe a downside of this movie is that it is a very cliched attempt to play at awards. I mean, it's an award-grabbing movie.
Oh, yeah, it knows that it's pushing your buttons, and it knows exactly what buttons it wants to push. I mean, of course Mateo has AIDS. Yeah. Of course that is the situation. Like, he's not dying of anything else. This is, I mean, there are tons upon tons upon tons of movies that came out in this era, and they all have this similar, like, Forrest Gump thing where it's like, oh, I've got this bug that we don't know about. It's always that HIV or AIDS sort of thing. So yes, that's cliche. A lot of like the, more, I don't know, I can't feel, I don't know how to feel type things, like that is a very cliche thing. But I mean, you could say that, I mean, the one thing about Gleaners and I, to go back to some of the negatives with that, is, I mean, you had basically a repetitive story over and over and over again. Like, you've met the same people multiple times, and you didn't really gain anything new from about half of them. I mean, there was the guy at the end I really enjoyed. I think that he's an interesting case study. The guy in the beginning, the gypsy guy in the beginning, interesting. Some of the kids are interesting. But other than that, it's the same thing over and over and over again.
I think the comment that I made about this is that there's a comedy program called Documentary Now that stars two characters from SNL, Fred Armisen and
Bill Hader.
Yeah. I thought this movie, Gleaners and I, would be a great Documentary Now movie, but as a movie of itself, I'm
and like I said,
not a huge fan.
My brain is telling me that the prestige behind this is like a French New Wave sort of thing. That I need to vote for that, but I think it's okay. I mean, with the immigrant story, I mean, this is basically Djimon Hounsou's greatest. I think this is probably his best performance, and I don't know who he went. I forget who he went up against with the Oscars that year. I think it was Tim Robbins.
That would be Mateo.
Yeah. Mateo's performance, all the kids' performances. There's a scene in here that I remember when I was a kid growing up. There's an acting scene where Patty Constantine goes through a number of accents.
Yeah, that's really good. That's entertaining.
Great scene. And I think the story is enough of... It resonates today as well, that we could... That I can reluctant... This is like a reluctant In America sort of nod here. And I think that's why I'm going to vote for In America. I mean, like I said, I think it's just the repetitive nature... The flourishes for Gleaners and I that I didn't just... There's no need for them. Like, I understand a couple of them, but they don't really add anything to what the plot is or what the movie's about.
I agree. Yeah, my vote goes for In America as well, which makes this, I believe, our first sweep of all four.
All four of us, yeah. Yes. Well, I mean... Well, I don't know if we can count because they hadn't seen Gleaners and I, but yes, I think that's the first time that we've all sweeped.
Would you even recommend watching The Gleaners and I to someone?
I don't know if I could.
I don't think I would.
I mean, you really have to be a cineasta to watch that movie.
That's a tough one to get the whole way through.
I would just watch like maybe the beginning and the end of it. if
Just
you
to get
really
the
want it. I mean, it's
perspective.
on Amazon Prime if you want to give it a spin. I mean, you don't have to.
It's free. It's
It's
free
free.
on Amazon Prime. Yeah.
Yeah. With a subscription to the Prime. Yeah. So I mean, like I said, reluctant heading on to. But I mean, with 100 movies, I guess you know what I mean. Something's gonna be on there that just that's why it's number 99. I guess. I would maybe even bump Requiem for a Dream up above this and put this at it.
Well, and I think as we go along, we're going to kind of reshuffle every couple of movies and see where the movies that have won out belong within the list that we've got. But we'll cross that bridge at another time.
All right, so that's In America. I guess we give it the thumbs up.
Yeah.
It's in our list.
We
In
put it
America
on our
is
list,
in our list, man. I was trying to think of the pun to put it in, but in our list will work for me. So Scott, where can they find you on the internet?
They can find me at Scott Eshelman on Twitter.
All right, and they can find me at GleamTeam_Pat1. Like our YouTube page,
Yes.
the Gleam Team Pop Culture Podcast YouTube page. There's tons of stuff there. We have reaction videos. We got the first episode if you want to check out to see what we thought of Big Hero 6 vs. Requiem for a Dream. Please like this video. Comment below it. It really does help us out.
And coming up the next time,
Yes, our next
we've got
X-Men.
X-Men. Yeah.
Yeah, X-Men Days of Future Past is going up against
10,
which is another documentary. Foreign documentary. Hopefully, it won't be as.
I got my fingers crossed for this one.
Yeah, I might have to give it the nod just because of what happened with this one. I mean, you gotta throw something in there. It can't all just be American list.
Well, it could be.
I guess it could be.
Could be.
Yeah,
We'll see.
yeah, we'll see.
We'll treat it as a whole new matchup.
Exactly. So stay tuned to that. You can find 10 on Amazon Prime if you want to give it a watch before, if you're a membership, if you have a membership or that. And X-Men Days of Future Past, it's not on anything streaming right now, but if you go to iTunes, I mean, it's readily available, and you can go to Best Buy, it's right there if you want to buy
This
it.
is a movie they'd have in stock still.
Oh yeah, definitely. So we'll see you back here on our third week.